Kadosh Boker or Masechet Kiddushin Daf Vav Amud Aleph 15a1 says the Gemara. We were talking about right now differences, whether it was a machloket between Tanakama and Rabbi Elazar, or there are differences between a person who sells himself or the bettin sell him. According to the Shita of Rabbi Elazar, Selam Shos. What does that mean? Right? The same thing. What does it mean? There's no difference between one another. It's all the same halachot. Whether it's a piercing of the ear, whether it's the 6 years and not more than 6 years, whether it's going to be, that you could get a shivcha or not, right? All these halachot, it's always the same thing. According to the Tanakama, there was always going to be the difference between the two different cases. So yesterday we finished off by saying, what's the reasoning of Tanakama that he said that the one that he's selling himself does not get the ear pierced? He says, since the Torah says, it says ozno, and ozno is extra, right? Why? Because obviously we know, you don't have to say, right, again, ozno beozno. Why are you saying extra again twice, the word ozno? So therefore you say, ozno shelo, velo ozno shel mocheret atzmo. It's only ozno shelo of the one that's sold through a betting, but not the one which is ozno, which is going to be sold through himself, because that's keilu, that's, we don't, or deresh the word from sachid. That's how we finished off yesterday. And the other Tana, which is a Bilazar, that he says that even if you're going to sell yourself, you're going to get the Ritzurai Nirtza, right? You're going to get the ear pierce. Hahi, that ozno was used for a Gezerah Shava Udeata, was used for a Gezerah Shava. The Tana, as we learned in a Braita, the Eliezer Omer Eliezer says, Minay L'Ritziyah Shehi Be'ozen Imanit. How do you know that you do it on the right ear? Maybe you do it on the left ear. Or maybe at least if you're a lefty, you would do it in the left ear. But how do you know that for sure you do it on the right ear? So says the Gemara, Ne'emar kan ozen, ne'emar lehalan ozen. By the mitzorah, that he's an ani, it's written over there also ozen. Ma lehalan, just like there by the mitzorah, the kavanah is ozin yamin, because it says over there, v'lakacha kol midam hashav natan tenuch ozen amitayer haymanit, and you said the word yamin. You're talking about the yamin. You're talking about the right earlobe. So too, Afghan, so too here, when we're talking about Ritziyah, we're talking about the earlobe, meaning I'm using the word ozno not to come and teach you that the extra word of ozno is dafka the ozen through a bedin, through somebody that sold bedin, and not through ozno, which is somebody that sells himself, but rather I need ozen gezerah shava from mitzorah, that just like all mitzorah, you're going to place from the blood of the asham, and you're going to place it on the right earlobe, so too here we're going to make sure that you're going to pierce the right ear. So now if I'm going to use it as a gezerah shava, I'm not going to say that it's extra now to teach you that there's going to be a difference between Badin selling him or he himself selling him. It's the exact same thing. So therefore, that's why I needed the extra word ve'ozno.
But that's the source.
That's the, no, what do you mean? And the other Tana, imken, if so, lemakra ozen, meaning like this. If you wanted to come and you wanted to learn a Gezerah Shava, ozen, it should have used the word veratza adonav et ozen, or et ozen. Why does it say et ozno? But just say ozen, right? Why does it say ozno, right? Because here, by the Mitzorah, it was written ozen. It says, velakacha kol midam hashav natan truch ozen amitayer aymani. So it's written ozen. So therefore, if it's written ozen, that's what it is. Why does it say ozno? So my ozno, right? What does it say ozno? So therefore, he wanted to make a differentiation between the Batin selling him and the other one selling him. That is the shita of, right, Tanakama. V'yidach, and according to Rabbi Elazar, ha'umi ba'ele ozno velo ozna. Why do we specifically say ozno and just say ozen? It says, you know why? It's dafka ozno and not ozna, not ama ivriya, which means there's no such din as ritzua, as the ear piercing, by the ama ivriya, and therefore she cannot stay anymore to become an ama. Meaning only by an eved ivri does there exist such a concept that after the shemitah, after the 6 years, when it comes shemitah, he goes up free, but if he chooses to stay, he's allowed to stay, and then they pierce his ear. Right? Why? Because right? Fine, because they're my slaves. Right? That was the reason why we actually pierce the ear. However, though, right, by ama ivriya doesn't exist. Meaning, come shemitah, she's out. scot-free. She doesn't come back. She's not allowed to stay. Because of that, it said specifically ozno, to teach you le'apuke, to exclude uzna. Meaning, technically speaking, it could have said the ozen. And then you're right, it's exactly the gzera shava. Ozen by metzorah, ozen by the eved ivri. But since I wanted to teach you it's dafka ozno velo ozna, that's why I said ozno. That's the shita of Rabbi Lazar. Okay, fine. Says the Gemara, ve'idach according to Tanakama. So then 1 second. So we need ozno then. So what are you telling me? Ozno is extra to come to differentiate between whether he was sold through a bedin or he sold himself, right? So 1 second. So what do you do with? How do you know that an eved ivri is the one that sold and he could stay for until 50 years until Yovel and not a ma'ivriya? So nafkala, he learns it from ve'im yomar ha'eved. Im yomar ha'eved lo etza, right? Ahavti et adoni v'tishti v'banai lo etze chofshi. Right? Right? There, it's v'im yomar ha'eved. Ha'eved v'lo amah. Meaning, there I learned it from im yomar ha'eved. I don't need it from ozno v'lo ozna. I learned it from v'im yomar ha'eved. And therefore, if I already know that v'im yomar ha'eved, that the nirtza, the one that gets the earpiece, is only shayach by an eved and not by an ama'ivriya. So therefore, what is ozno coming to teach you? Ozno is coming, because if it was written ozen, then you're right, it could have given you a gzera shava. But since it was written ozno, comes teach you that there's a difference between mocheret atzmo and nimkar al yedei bedin. B'idach, and according to Rabbi Lazar, right? Mi ba'eleh ad shiomar keshehu eved. He says, you know what he's going to do according to Shtat Rabbi Lazar with the pasuk v'im yomar ha'eved? He holds that the eved is coming to teach you that an eved is not going to be nirtza until he's going to say, Ahavti et adoni lo etze chofshi keshehu eved, meaning before the end of the 6 years. But if it was only after that, and he said, and now he already becomes a free man, eno nirtza. Meaning, if right now it finished the term, and after finishing the term, now he says, you know what? Technically speaking, I'm scot-free, but you know what? I want to stay. It doesn't help. V'im yomar ha'eved, hu tzarich la'agid et ze, he has to say it, adayin keshehu eved, when he's still an eved. What does that mean? That has to be. That's what you're learning from the pasuk v'im yomar ha'eved. Meaning, according to Shtat Rabbi Lazar, it's not that it's coming to teach you dafka eved v'lo ma'ivriya. Nothing to do with it. Nothing to do with it. You know what it's coming to teach you, right? Because why? Because you already learned eved v'lo ma'ivriya from ozno v'lo ozna. So what does it teach you? He has to say it when he's still an eved. He has to say this halacha when he's still an eved. Okay? Ve'idach, however, though the Tanakama, he holds that the din of anama is not going to be nirtzat me'eved ha'eved nafka. What does that mean? It could have just said ve'im yomar eved ahavti et adoni right ve'tishti ve'banai. Why does it say ve'im yomar ha'eved? The extra hay of ha'eved is going to be doresh, it's going to be extra to be mema'et, that only it's an eved, and not an anama. From the extra hay. The idach, and according to Shtat Rabbi Lazar, eved, ha'eved, lo darish. He's not going to be doresh, right? This entire concept of, right, eved, ha'eved. Okay? Okay? Says the Gemara, my tama de Tanakama, the amar mocher atzmo manikin lo. You remember we spoke about many differences between whether he sold himself or he gets sold through a bedin. One of the things is that after the person goes free, you have to give him ma'anak. This, by the way, is where, ma'anak l'chag or ma'anakim. Ma'anak means that you give him like a severance pack. You give him like some. Now, usually nowadays, severance is more used when you fire someone. But technically speaking, it was a ma'anak. It was like a present. So therefore, even until nowadays, kolonim, this, that, they come and they give ma'anak l'chag or ma'anakim, right? Ma'anakim lo. So here the Torah says that after the eved leaves, ha'anek ta'anik lo. Right? You come, you give him a present, you give him something. So, according to Tanakama, he comes and he says, mocher atzmo, if he sold himself, he doesn't get his present. He only gets his present only if he was sold through a bedin, but not through himself. How do we know this? Miet Rachmana, the Torah comes and excludes it, but it says by machru bedin, ha'anek ta'anik lo. Meaning in the varim over there, it said, ha'anek ta'anik lo. Right? Lo, ve'lo mocher atzmo. When it says Hanek Tanik lo to him, only the one that was sold through a bedin, and not to somebody that sells himself. Okay, so therefore, the one that's sold through betting, he gets presents when he goes out. But if he sells himself, he doesn't get presents when he goes out. Says the Gemara, and according to Rabbi Lazar, that he says no, there's no difference. That you always get presents. There, he needs it for lo velo yorshav. You only give it to him the presents, but not to his inheritors. Meaning, what happens if he dies? In the middle of his term, until Yovel, he comes and he dies. It could be even in 48th year, right? And mamash, it's only until one more year to go. Doesn't matter. The yorshim, you don't have to give them the presents. You only have to give the presents to who? To him himself, to the Eved himself, not to yorshim. That's what they learned, the lo velo yorshav. That's according to Rabbi Lazar. And according to Tanakama, lo, right, velo lemocheret atzmo. Says the Gemara, yorshav, amaylo, why don't you give a bemet to the yorshim? Right? So says the Gemara, sachir ikari rachmana. But the Torah called them a sachir. Ki mishne sechar sachir avadecha sheshanim. But there's in Parashat Re'eh. Yeah, so he says over here, ki mishne sechar sachir avadecha sheshanim. Which sefer? Yeah? Very good. Baruch Hashem. Ki mishne sechar sachir avadecha sheshanim. Ma sachir peulato liyorshav. Afar peulato liyorshav. Just 1 second. If somebody works for you, yeah, and now he passes away, you don't have to pay him? You don't have to pay his yoshim? For sure you do. So therefore, the exact same thing. If we're calling this Eved a Sachir, and he passes away, just like you should have given him the Ma'anak, you should give it to the Yoshim also. Why not? Answers the Gemara, right? So he said, 1 second, because of that, you're right. According to Shtat Rabbi Lazar, he says you're right. It's lo velo lebal chovo. What does that mean? I'm changing. I'm not saying lo velo yorshav, because be'emet, really, you should give it to the Yoshim. But rather, be'emet, the word lo means to the Eved you give him the hanaka, velo lebal chovo, but not to somebody that an Eved is chayav lo. Meaning you only give it to the Eved himself, but not to somebody that he's obligated to. So
children?
Yeah, the children, they do get it. They do get it. That's what we just said. That you do get for the Yoshim, because he's called a sachid.
But not the master.
But not the, how do you call this? But not the balchov. No, balchov. Balchov are the creditors, the people that he owes money to. Okay. Only that's what you learn from law. Just like usually, we hold the Rabbi Natan. What does that mean? Listen to this very, very carefully. The Tainas we learned in a Braita. Amar Rabbi Natan, says Rabbi Natan, minayin lenoshe bechavero maneh bechavero bechavero, minayin shemotzim mizeh v'notnim lezeh. Imagine right now, I owe you money, but you owe him money. Can I go directly to him and give it directly to him? How do we know? Lenoshe bechavero maneh bechavero bechavero. So he says here the case. Reuven, for example, lends to Shimon, and Shimon lends to Levi. Minayin shemotziim mizeh. How do we know that we take out from Levi and we give it to Reuven? Meaning we're skipping Shimon in the middle.
No star?
Right? No. Well, we'll see 1 second. But star, no star. 1 second. So what happens? We skip Levi in the middle. Then notnim lezeh, and we give to Reuven. How do we know you do that? Tamulomar v'natan la'asher asham lo. That you have to give that which he's obligated to, the asham, right? So therefore, since by a chov ragil, usually you do come and you pay directly to Reuven. Ata lo, the word lo comes la'apuke to exclude that the ma'anak you give only to the Eved and not to the person that the Eved is chayav. Meaning, I would have thought to say, listen, right? If the Eved now is chayav to a creditor $1,000, and I just gave him a ma'anak of $1,000, don't give it to the Eved, give it to the creditor, just like you do like a normal chov. Lo velo lebal chovo. The idach and the other Tana, which is Tanakama, how do we know, right, that we do this? So he comes and he says that we do not come and we don't give him the manak. He says, he doesn't hold Rabbi Natan. Meaning, if he doesn't hold Rabbi Natan, that's why it makes sense that we're not going to come and we're not going to have this mute because we don't hold it. So you don't need the lo to lo bal chovo. You never give it to the bal chovo anyway, according to the shita of Tanakama. Okay? Nekuda. Next. My Tanakama, what's the reason of Tanakama? Why is it that according to shita Tanakama, right, the master cannot give him a shifcha kenani to this eved that he sold himself? So says the Gemara, since it says by mechlu betim, imadona vitel lo isha, and it says lo le'eved which was sold through the betim, lo velo lemocher atzmo. We did the exact same limud, meaning just like it says there that his master is going to give him a shifcha kenanit only if he was sold through a bedin, lo velo lemocher atzmo. The idach, but according to Rabbi Lazar, lo is bal kolcho. The word lo comes to teach you that it's against his will, which means that basically he comes and he gives it to him. He doesn't ask him. He doesn't come and tell him, listen, do you want to get married to a shivcha kenanit? He comes and he gives it to him. And by the way, you should know he was very disgraceful. You understand? It's very disgraceful. Sometimes people come, right? And okay, usually it's tava, right? Sometimes they'll come, they'll get married, yeah. But sometimes they have, they look, it's like mamash, it's a shivcha. So imagine right now you're coming, you're taking a guy that he was a ben chorin, a regular free person, and now not only does he get to become a slave, you give him a shivcha kananit. It's but it's bal korcho. It's against his will that you actually come and you do that.
So that's a punishment.
What? Well, I don't know if you want to call it a punishment exactly, but it's against his will, right? So therefore he comes and he says it's mashma that don levad, he's the machlit, which means the guy does not have a choice. He's sold as a slave. Here's a shivcha kananit. That's all that there is. There's nothing more to talk about. Okay, but the other Tana, which is Tana Kama, he already learned it from Mishneh Sachar Sachid. The Tana was learned in a Braita. Ki Mishneh Sachar Sachar avadecha Sachid hu eno oved el bayom. Eved ivri oved bayom ulayla. We know that only a Sachid works during the daytime. He doesn't work during the nighttime, right? So he comes and he says, how do you know? How do you know? It says Kitov. So 1 second. If at the end of the day it says Kitov lo imach, which means it has to be good by you, meaning not because he's a slave, you're going to make him into a real slave. You understand? No. He's your slave. He works for you, everything that you want. But there has to be a certain type of, you understand? Like, you're not going to, he's not a chamor, right? So he says, imach b'ma'achal, imach b'mishteh. Remember, when it says kitov lo imach means what you eat, he eats. What you drink, he drinks. V'amar b'yitzchak, says b'yitzchak, mikan sherabo moseh lo shivcha kenanit. Which means that from here we're actually learning, right, that for sure you cannot come and make him work at nighttime. At nighttime, right, he's resting, just like you're resting. But, says the Yitzchak, from here we learn that you give him a shivcha kananit. Why? Because from the words lo, it was only here to teach you that the Rabbi gives him a shivcha kananit bal korcho, right? Which means that we're learning it already, that he's getting a bal korcho, meaning we're not learning lo bal korcho from im yadona v'itel lo isha. That's bal korcho, because according to the Shitav Tanakama, you already learned that from kitov lo imach, right? Which already means that. Okay, so therefore he comes and he says, right? Here he comes and he says it's considered ki'ilu that he is working at nighttime, because when he goes with a shivcha kananit, he's working. He's living with a shivcha kananit. And by living with her, he's having the children. So he is living during the day and nighttime. But it's not physical work of the back labor work. It's other type of work, right? Huh? Exactly. That's what it is. Okay? So that's what it means. However, though, the other one, he comes and he says, so according to this, it's not really a punishment. It's just part of the work. It's part of the job. The job is, you have to work for me day and nighttime. So day and nighttime, this is the nighttime that you're working. Okay? Ve'idach, and the other Tana, which is a Bilazar, if you're going to learn it from the Mishneh Sachar Sachid, right, and it says Kitov lo imach, hava mina namili medateh. I would have thought it's the opposite, because when you come and it's working for his positive, meaning when you come and you say Kitov lo imach, and tov lo means b'ma'achal, imecha b'ma'achal, imecha b'mishteh. What is that? All the positive, meaning he's eating what you're eating. You can't give him the leftovers. You understand? He's eating what you're eating. He's drinking what you're drinking. So that's positive. So the opposite, I would have thought, says Rabbi Lazar, if it was only written Mishneh Sachar Sachid, I would have thought to say that what? It has to be midateh. It has to be only if he wants. And it cannot be bal korcho. Bal korcho lo. Kamashmalan comes to teach you that it's only going to be lo bal korcho, against his will. That is the shita of, right, Rabbi Elazar.
But his children, sorry.
Tana delayalif sachir. Who's the Tana, right, that we just mentioned above and Yudalad Mubet, that does not make the Gzera Shava of, right, sachir. So says the Gemara, hi Tana, it's this one, which is Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov, right? The Tana was learned in a Braita. This is talking about somebody that sells himself. Okay, so he says over there, V'shav el mishpachto, which means the kavanah is he goes out in Yovel. Amar Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov says, what are you talking about? So he says, if we're talking about that somebody that he came and he sold himself, which means that if Yovel comes within the 6 years, he goes off free. It already says it. Yeah? And if it's going to be now nirtza, which means that he's also going to go out. Yeah, so he comes, he says, it already says in another pasuk. So basically what we're talking about is that the Bedin were the ones that sold him 2 or 3 years before the Yovel. So Yovel takes him out. So says the Gemara, now if you're going to tell me now, Yalif, that according to Shittat Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov, he's going to learn Agzera Shava, Sachid. Lamali, so why do I have to include Machru Bedin, that he goes on Yovel? Nelef Sachid, learn Agzera Shava from Sachid. And therefore, the fact that you don't do that, that's why I need an extra pasuk to teach you that an Eved is going to come and that's he's sold by Bedin, he goes out by Yovel. Just learn from Mishneh Sachid. But if you don't learn that, that's why you need this extra pasuk. Okay? So basically, that's what we're actually coming and we are mentioning. Okay? So the concept of Sachar Sachid. Okay, was there, by the way, it was written, meaning because he was poor, that's why he was sold to you. Not because he stole or he did something, that's why he was sold to you. That's what usually through a bedding. But he's poor, that's why he sold himself to you. So that's the concept. So says the Gemara, Amar Rav Nachman bar Yitzchak, says Nachman Yitzchak, Leolam, really be'emet, according to Shittat Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov, Yalif Sachid Sachid. Yeah, you do come and you learn from Sachar Sachid. Ve'itz tzirich, and you still need it. This is why. Salka daita chamina, I would have thought to say, right, mocher atzmo hu delo avad isura. By only by mocher atzmo, that he's not going to do an isur, okay? Aval mecharu betin, but if the betin sold him, the avad isura, that he did do an isur, ima niknese, I would have thought to say that you give him a knas. And therefore, since you give him a knas, he doesn't go out by Yovel. Rather, he has to actually work the 6 years. Kamash malan, no. Everyone understood? One more time. When a person is poor, what happens? If he's poor, so I'm going to say, listen, misken, he's poor. If he sold himself and comes Yovel within the 6 years, he goes out Yovel. No problem. Chazak baruch. But what happens if he did an Avirah? And Betin sold him, because that's the case. When Betin will never sell him if he's pure. He sells himself if he's poor. What happened? So there, I would have thought to say a Havamina. You know what? Give him a knas. What's a knas? Even if Yovel comes in the middle, boom, I don't care. He still has to work for the 6 years. Kamashmalan, that's why you needed the extra pasuk. The extra pasuk had to teach you that even if you do learn Sachir, it doesn't matter. You still need an extra pasuk to teach you. He still goes out free, and we don't give him the knas. Okay? Fine. More says, Eliezer ben Yaakov, we're talking about as follows, okay? If we're talking about that it says, V'shav al mishpachto, which means you're going back to the family, benirtza, and we're talking about a nirtza, harek varamur, meaning, if we're talking about that we're talking about a nirtza, that he goes back to his family, it was already said there, right? Maihi, how do we know that a nirtza goes out in Yovel? The Tanya, as we learned in a pasuk, in the Braita, V'shavtem isha lechuz tov isha mishpachto tashuvu. What does that mean? What are we talking about now that a person goes out free to his family? Even if we're talking about that he sold himself at a kavaramur, it already said it. It says that Shnat Yovel Yavod Imach. Even Machru Betin, if it was going to be Bedin, Harek Varamur, it already says it in the previous pasuk. V'shavan Nishvato. Hayne Ketum Medaber Nitza 2 ו3 shanim lifnei Yovel. Shayovel Motzio. We're talking about that the Yovel is going to take him out. My mashma, how do we know that this is what we're talking about? Amar Rav Shila Makar, the pasuk says, Ish. ושבתם איש אל אחוזתו ואיש אל משפחתו תשובו. איזה דבר שנוהג באיש ואין נוהג באישה? What is the only thing that works by an ish and not by isha? Retziah. Remember, the becoming an earpiece. How do you know that only an ever becomes? That's all. That's going to Tanakama. According to Rabbi Lazar. Ozno v'lo ozna. Chazak baruch. Very good. I'm just trying to do a chazara. Very good. So therefore, he says, what's the only thing that applies to a man and not to a woman? Let's see. Says the Gemara, and it had to write down V'shav mishpachto mecharu bedin to do with mecharu bedin, and it had to write down also also by the nirtza to do with shavtem mishpachto. Why? If it was only talking about bedin, because it didn't come as time yet, which means if it didn't come the 6 years, that's why you needed this chidush that he goes free. Aval nirtza. It's already his man. I would say, you know what? Give him a knas that he shouldn't go out at all, right? And why? Because he was over on that which the Torah says, "Ki avadai him," right? Right? You remember, right? That v'lo yu avadim lavadim. So v'yashmin, and if you're going to tell me nirtza mishum davar leshesh, because at least he did 6 years, and then came the Yovel. Somebody was sold by a Bedin that he didn't do the 6 years, and now comes the Yovel. Elmaleh, I would say no. Tzricha, that's why you needed both different psukim. Okay? Ve'itzich lemichtav v'shavtem, ve'itzich lemichtav leolam. You needed to write down v'shavtem. Right? But there it says v'ratza adonav. So v'shavtem isha lechuzdov v'shvato tashuvu. And you needed to write down also v'avado leolam. Right? What does that mean? Remember that since it said in the Torah, he has to serve him forever. Leolam is Yovel. Right? That's why they learn. That's where you're going to see the chilul. Okay? So therefore, v'itzach lemichtav v'shavtem, v'itzach lemichtav leolam. You didn't need to write v'shavtem, and you didn't need to write leolam. Why? Until the Yovel. Why? Katav rachmana, because if the Torah only wrote leolam, hava mina leolam mamash. Meaning like this. If I would have thought, if I'm reading to you pasuk, yeah, and I'm a pashtan, I come and I tell you it's written, what does that mean? You pierce his ear, and how long does he have to work for you? Forever.
Wow.
Leolam. Forever.
Right?
What's overruling? No overruling. The word leolam means forever. Right? Exactly. It's not overruling. There's no such thing as yovel. It's the concept is leolam. Leolam means keep shuto. That's a havamina. Leolam mamash. Katav rachmana. That's why the Torah teaches us v'shavtem to teach you what? No, that he goes out. V'shavtem yishav yishvato v'yishvato tashuv. V'ikatav rachmana v'shavtem. Now, if it was only written v'shavtem, havamina, I would have thought say hanamile echadolo avachesh. That's only if he did not work for the 6 years. Aval hecha de'avad. Right? That means what? We're talking about that it came the Yovel, and he's going to be Yotzev Yovel only if he did not work 6 years. Aval hecha de'avad, but if he didn't work the 6 years, lo yeh sofo chamur mitchilato. The end, which is the second working, is not going to be more chamur than the beginning. Matchilato shesh, af sofo nami shesh. Meaning, I want to say maybe like Mordechai. 1 second. You know what? 1 second. Why do we go to this extreme? A person comes and he sells himself, or he was sold by Bedin. How long does he have to work for? Till Shemitah, 6 years. Chazak u'baruch. All of a sudden, he comes and he says, "Ani ohevet Adoni. Ani rotze lishel po. Tov li po. I want to stay here." What do? Nirtza. If it wasn't written v'avado leolam and it was only written v'shavtem, I would have thought to say that sofo ze lo yoter chamur mitchilato, meaning the end, which is after the nirtza, is not going to be better. It's not going to be more stricter than the beginning. Just like the beginning were first 6 years, so to now 6 years. If I wouldn't have written v'avado leolam, you work until when? Shemitah. You want to stay b'chavod. Let me pierce your ear. And then how long do you have to stay for? Until the next Shemitah. Until now, Yovel. What's going? Kamashmanan comes to teach you v'avado leolam. Leolamo shel Yovel. They're talking about leolam. Leolamo means leolamo shel Yovel. Okay, fine. Says the Gemara. Elaman Tana de Loyali. So who's the one that doesn't learn this concept of Sachir? Rabbi. It's Rabbi. The Tanyas we learned in a Braita. Tedvav Amubet. Yeah, 15b. Says the Gemara. Ve'im lo yigael be'ele. If he's not going to be redeemed. We're talking about now an Eved Ivri that was sold to a Goy. Are you listening? Yeah. Eved Ivri sold to a Goy. Now what happens? He says, if he's not going to be redeemed from a family member, because there, technically speaking, it's written that somebody should try to redeem him, meaning a family member. Rabbi says, he could only be redeemed by family members. And he cannot be redeemed by 6 years of working. That I would have thought to say, it's a kavachomen. These people that are not going to be redeemed by family members, which means somebody that's going to be sold by Israel, meaning, imagine right now, somebody comes and he sells himself, or he's sold by a Bedin, right? You can't just come and it's not going to be like redeemed through Krovim, right? The Gemara is going to, it's Ninkal Israel, right? The Pidyon is only through himself, not through a family member, right? The Pidyon is only through himself, meaning a family member cannot come and redeem him, he has to redeem himself. So Nigal Beshesh, he's going to be redeemed in 6 years. Zesh Nigal Be'ele, but this guy, which is sold to a Goy, that he can be redeemed by family members, Eno Din Shenigal Beshesh, Kal Vachot, he should be redeemed in 6 years. Talmud comes to teach you Be'ele Unigal Ve'nigal Beshesh. He's only going to be redeemed by the family members, not by the 6 years of working. So somebody that he sells himself to a Goy, according to the Shita of Rabbi, he could only be redeemed through family members. He does not get redeemed by the amount of years that he worked. Says the Gemara, you're going to tell me now that you learned. Sachir, Sachir. Amaika Amar, why do we say, Umami she'enu nigal be'ele nelaf Sachir, Sachir? If right now, if you're not going to be redeemed by the family members, but fine, learn a Gzera Shava Sachir, Sachir, which means that somebody that's sold to a Goy should be redeemed by family members. So too, if he's going to be sold to a Israel, should be redeemed by family members, because you should learn Sachir, Sachir. But rather, obviously, you don't make this Gzera Shava. So Amram Nachman Yitzchak said Nachman Yitzchak, Le'olam Yalif, really be'emet, you do learn this Gzera Shava, Sachir, Sachir. But here it's different. Damar Krab, as the pasuk says, Echad me'echav yigalenu. What does that mean? Lazeh ve'lo la'acher. Meaning it has to be one of his brothers are going to redeem this person that's sold to a goy, ve'lo la'acher, and not anybody else. Meaning, Echad me'echav yigalenu, to him, is going to redeem him, and not somebody else. What does that mean? Only a Jew that's sold to a goy can be redeemed from a family member, but not if he's sold to another Jew, and therefore you cannot make a Gzera Shava. So Uman Tana de Pali. Which one? No. Uman Tana de Pali Galeh de Rabbi. So who's the one that argues on Rabbi? Rabbi Yosef Galilei, Rabbi Akiva. So Yosef Galilei, Rabbi Akiva. Right? The Tanya is going to the Braita. Lo yigal be'ele. Rabbi Yosef Galilei Omer be'ele. What does it mean be'ele mean? Le'shichrur, le'shar kol adam, le'shi'abud. What does that mean? When it says v'im lo yigal be'ele, means to the family members. That's how he's going to get out from the goy to cherut. But he's not going to be mishtabed to the karov. Meaning, when the family member does come and he frees him, he doesn't become a slave to the family member. But somebody else that comes and redeems him, he becomes now his slave. Meaning the Torah was giving us like something special that, listen, you have a mitzvah if you want, you can redeem him. But if it's a family member redeeming him, he goes free. If it's a stranger redeeming him, he now becomes Ke'ilu, the slave of the stranger. Right? Yeah, then he goes out free. Bishar kol adam l'shifrut. So he says, Rabbi Akiva comes and he says, no, be'ele is l'shibud. Meaning, if it's going to be the family members, he goes l'shibud. Bishar kol adam l'shifrut. The exact opposite. Meaning, the machloke between Rabbi Yosef Galilei and Rabbi Akiva are the exact opposite, bipolar. Meaning, when the family member comes and he redeems him, is it better or worse? According to Yosef Galilei, if the family member redeemed him from the goyim, he's free. And if it was somebody else, he becomes mishu'abad to him. According to Yosef Galilei, the exact opposite. If it's a family member that comes and redeems him from the goy, he becomes mishu'abad to the family member. But if it was anybody else, he goes completely scot-free.
So why did they change the opinion?
No, it's not changing the opinion. Machloket of Yosef Galilei and Rabbi Akiva. Machloket of Yosef Galilei and Rabbi Akiva, that's the machloket right between them. Because remember, according to the Shita of Rabbi, he comes and he says, right, that the Nimkar is le'eved, right, is not going to go out b'shesh at all. Okay? So he comes now and he says, right, like this. So he says, what's the reason of Yosef Galilei? Amar Krat says in Pasuk, Im lo yigael be'ele, with the family members, ela be'acher v'yatza b'shnat yovel. Then he's going to go out, so it's mashma, that if it's the family members, he goes free already. But if it's somebody else, then he's going to go out and be yovel. He's going to be mishtabed at yovel. Rabbi Akiva says, no, Im lo yigael ela be'ele, v'yatza b'shnat yovel. Then he goes out in yovel, which means he's going to be mishubad until the yovel. But if not, if it's going to be somebody else, he goes out completely free immediately. Rabbi Yosef Galilei midi, right? According to Rabbi Yosef Galilei, what is he going to tell you? Midi ella be'ele kativ. It doesn't say v'im lo yigael. It just says, right? If it was only written v'im lo yigael be'ele, then it's fine. But now that it's actually written, right? The im lo yigael be'ele, and it actually says the entire thing. Now you can't say that anymore, okay? Because of the rest of the pasuk. Ela ba'ikra kamipalged. There's a machloket as follows. The machloket is, it says, who's going to redeem it? His uncle or his cousin? Zeu geula krovim. That is the family members, right? Family members, right? Or yisiga yodo. What does it mean now? Yisiga yodo. The geula tatzmo. When it says yisiga yodo, yeshlo kesef me'atzmo. Yisiga yodo. Venigal zu geula tacherim. When it says with the word venigal, it means that he was redeemed through other people. So therefore, according to, we're now going to see the three-way machloket now, the two-way machloket. Rabbi Yosef Galilei says, Mikra nidrash lefanav. You always take the pasuk and you go backwards. What does that mean? Right? The pasuk of Geulat Atzmo is teaching you al Geula Acheret, which is written on it. Which means, just like when he redeems himself, he goes free. So too, there's another geula which goes free. Shadi geulat krovim geulat atzmo. It's much more logical to say that if it's already a family member redeeming him, he should become free. So therefore, I'm going to throw geulat krovim to geulat atzmo. Ma geulat atzmo the shichrur, just like when he redeems himself, he goes 100% free. So to geulat krovim, he goes 100% free. Rabbi Kiva says, no, mikra nidrash lacharav, but you go afterwards, not beforehand. Meaning, when you're already coming and saying or teaching us a pasuk, go further down. Don't look backwards. Shadi geulat acherim geulat atzmo, which means you put geulat acherim on geulat atzmo. Just like geulat atzmo l'shichrur, so too geulat acherim is the shichrur, and therefore geulat krovim is shi'abud. So says the Gemara, Yachi, so be'ele lamali. Why do I need the word then be'ele? So he comes and he says, ilav be'ele. If it wasn't the fact that the pasuk's coming be'ele, hava mina, I would have added hava mina the one mikra nidrash ben lefanav ben lacharav ve'akol l'shichrur. That the pasuk is going to be doresh whether it's before or afterwards. And everything is the shichrur. Everything is going to be for what? For letting go, right? It's completely free, meaning that mamash, everyone goes free, right? That's a havamim. Meaning, if I'm going to come and I'm going to say it applies to both, so I would say everyone goes free. Doesn't matter whether he redeemed himself, whether he was redeemed by family members, whether he was redeemed by other people. Akol shichrur. So says the Gemara, Yachi, if so, hada kushel dirte. Again, it goes back to that which we said again, right? He comes and he says, hada kushel dirte. Says Gemara, ela bisvara kamipalge. But rather, we're talking about a svara. What does that mean? Rabbi Yosef says, mistabra, geulat acherim l'shtibud, right? It's more mistaber to say that other people, when they're already going to redeem him, he becomes subjugated to them. That's worse. That's the truth. It's much more mistaber. But if you're going to tell me they go completely free, why are they going to free him? Think about it. I don't even know you. Why in the world am I going to come and I'm going to redeem you? Right? So obviously, if I'm redeeming you, it means that that you know what, I'm going to gain from it. Well, you become my slave. Makes sense. That's the shita of Rabbi Yosef. Rabbi Akiva Savar, no, misabra gula krovim l'shibur. Why? He's always going to sell himself. You know what's going to happen? Imagine right now a person, he needs money. He sells himself. Family, come redeem me. There's a mitzvah in the Torah. The family have to redeem. So you're going to say that they're going to go free every single day. He's going to sell himself. He needs money. And then the family again and again and again. And by the way, you should know this happens until today. You don't know how many times it happens that people come, right? And I know many stories, right? That they come and all of a sudden they get themselves into trouble. And then what? A family member has to come, bail them out. Whether it's money, whether it's this, whether it's that, a whole bunch of times. And again, and always, right? It's very, the person has to understand.
But you don't have the same obligation to.
These are the words of Rabbi Akiva. Aval Chachamim argue and they say, Hakol l'shichrur. Whenever you redeem him, doesn't matter whether it's a family member, doesn't matter whether it's alidei atzmo, the meaning himself, doesn't matter whether it's going to be through other people, he always goes scot-free. Right? Man Chachamim, who are those Chachamim? Rabbi. It's Rabbi. Because he comes and he uses the word ve'im lo be'ele, he uses the word be'ele for another dirasha. Right? What is other dirasha? Right? Mikra, he comes and he says, according to him, the pasuk is time to teach you nidrash, and he goes backwards and forwards. And since it's going backwards and forwards, so it's teaching you that any type of a geula, doesn't matter through how, will always come and, right, and what? And will become scot-free. So according to this, says the Gemara, so according to Rabbi, what does it mean? At the end of the day, what is it coming to teach you? If at the end of the day, anyway, you know, he should be subjugated until the Yovel. What does that mean? It's not true. The second he's redeemed, he's free. So it says the Gemara, he needs it for that which we learned in the right of Yatza Bishnat Yovel be'oved kochavim sheshno tachat yadecha. We're talking about an oved kochavim that's under your hands, and still if they didn't redeem the eved because of Maleh, yisharu birshuto ada Yovel, meaning he stays in your possession until the Yovel. Or maybe it's an oved kochavim that's not under you, right? So Marta, so he comes and he says, what do you want to do? What do you want to do now to this goy that's not Shitat Yisrael? Benkach, it's not normal to come, right? Even if it was mutar. So what are you going to do? Obviously, we're talking about an oved kochavim, which is under your hand. So therefore, since we're talking about now an oved kochavim, right? That means basically what we're trying to say is that a person should not trick himself. So saying, you know, like in our halakha, to say, you know what? the Eved could go out even without it being redeemed. No. You have to come and you have to redeem, right? There has to be the money. But that's talking about again Novek Kochavim, which is going to be under your hands. And tomorrow, B'ezrat Hashem, we're going to continue with the 2 dots.